it was there automatically before, no?
It was not there automatically before,
So,
I think.
So what you're saying is what I was told
Yes.
was incorrect and unethical?
I don't believe that's what I said.
Oh, no. Okay, there was a situation that if a life insurance company was to go bankrupt, which is really what you're talking about, and the expressed interest of the insured individuals that they had would get moved over to some other life insurance company, usually the one that chose to buy out that company.
Correct.
Before 1990, before this company got involved. Now, my understanding is that this company is facilitating that.
Correct.
Why?
Okay, because that's an interesting question, but so let me explain my view here. If you're willing for me to respond to this, because you're not letting me respond, but I can respond to this. In 1990, prior to that, life insurance companies may take care of their own business. So they saw that maybe one company was troubled, and to maintain the structure of the industry, they may take it in place. In 1990, following the failures of all the trust companies, the government actually mandated that we needed to have a compensation corporation to facilitate this process. It's part of the structure of the system. So there's one for the banks, which is CDIC, and Assurus handles the life insurance industry.
But is it under the Banking Act or is it under the Insurance?
It's under the Insurance Companies Act. So Assurus is designated as a compensation corporation under the Insurance Companies Act to protect policyholders should there be an insolvency of a life insurance company.
But that was before 1990.
It was not.
It was not.
It was not.
So, life insurance companies, I'll have to check which ones went under before 1990. And you're saying if they did, their clients were not looked after. I don't know. Because that scares me as to what I told you.
What I'm telling you is that there wasn't a formal proceeding for those policyholders to be taken care of.
In order to keep the life insurance integrity.
Okay. So I think the audience is actually getting frustrated with this debate. You want to debate this further? What I'm telling you is in 1990, Assurus was mandated under the Insurance Companies Act to facilitate the transfer and protect policyholders if a life insurance company were to go insolvent. Okay. All right, thank you. There was another question over there.
So two parts. One is Concord for Assurance. Now the second part is going on to your online registry. The Foresters Life Insurance Company is covered by Assurance, but their fraternal organization is not.
Correct. So just to repeat what he said, Assurus was formerly known as Concord Life. We did change the company name in 2005 from Concord to Assurus. And the second point that he made was that Foresters Life Insurance Company is a registered life insurance company and therefore is protected by Assurus. Foresters, the fraternal organization, is not protected by Assurus.
Just to close this out, we all remember Confederation Life. The regulators moved in, settled it completely. Everybody got their money. The regulators were handling distribution to other insurance companies as well as settling any outstanding requirements. But that was all handled by the regulators previously. But now Assurance plays a role.
I'm sorry, I just need to correct you. Actually, Assurus handled Confederation Life with the regulator. Absolutely, we were. We absolutely did handle the Confederation Life insolvency, and we actually handled the transfer of all those policies. Will do. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about Assurus. So we are backed by the industry. We're an industry-funded organization. Alicia mentioned there's 70 members. Every life insurance company that is authorized to sell life insurance in Canada under federal, provincial, or territorial law is required to become a member of Assurus. The second thing is we are designated by, I think they've been asked that the questions be held till the end. Thank you. We are designated under the Insurance Companies Act to be the designated compensation corporation to protect policyholders. And Quebec has a different act, so they have recognized us as the compensation organization for Quebec members as well.
Can I just ask you what the Gerald thinks?
You can ask that question at the end of the presentation. Okay, so Assurus holds a liquidity fund of $165 million. We're targeting to have this fund at $200 million by 2021. We keep this liquidity fund so that if there's an insolvency, we can actually right away protect the policyholders. So we actually enter in a contract with the liquidator. So if one of your clients is receiving a monthly income from an annuity, we will be able to continue to pay that monthly income until the failure is resolved and the policy is actually transferred. So this 165 million, which will be 200 million, gives us immediate access to make sure there's no disruption for policyholders. We also have an unlimited funding capacity. As I mentioned, we are funded by the life insurance industry. We're what we call a post-funded organization, which means that we pass the hat around through all our organizations, member companies, the life insurance companies, if there's a failure. And the life insurance does take care of its own, and through Assurus will fund the cost of an insolvency. So we are the experts in protecting policyholders. There's been 4 insolvencies in Canada since 1990. So this gentleman over here mentioned Confederation Life. Does anybody know the other insolvencies that happened in Canada? So there's been a lot of companies that have been bought and merged, but 4 actual insolvencies. Les Cooperons was the first one in Quebec in 1990, followed by Sovereign Life out west. Confederation Life was the big one in Toronto, and more recently, Union of Canada, which was a small company, a mutual, in Ottawa. In all cases, the policyholders were transferred to another solvent company where their benefits were continued. In the case of Confederation Life, every policyholder got $1 on the dollar. There were no losses. There was no losses on the cooperators. And in the case of Sovereign Life, 5% of the policyholders only maintained 95%, so a very small loss. And in the case of Union du Canada, everybody maintained all their benefits except for approximately 20 policyholders who had accumulation annuities, and they lost 5%. So they actually retained 95% of their accumulation annuity. So we think these are pretty good results. So what does Assurus does? Well, we continuously prepare for resolutions, and when we talk about resolution, is taking the failed company and resolving it to a successful outcome for the policyholders, because ultimately we're here to protect policyholders. So we will always look at the different options for how we can manage a solvent resolution so that there's little disruption to the policyholders, minimize cost to the industry, and more importantly, what we think is very important is to maintain the confidence in the industry, because if a life insurance company fails, you want the whole industry to still be strong and people to still buy the products and not be shaken by that. So the better we can handle the insolvency of one life insurance company, the better it is for the industry as a whole. So we do work in partnership with the regulators. So we get the same regulatory filings that the regulator gets from the members. So we get all the financial reporting, we'll get the dynamic capital adequacy testing reporting, we'll get the appointed actuaries report. And what we do is we analyze all of that. We do a company risk analysis for all companies, and we try to identify solvency risks before they become a problem. And so we can share that information with the regulator. We prepare analysis reports that we share with the regulators. And the better we understand the industry risk and the solvency risk, the better outcome there will be for the policyholders and the industry should there be a failure. So if there is an insolvency or a failed company, at this time, Assurus' role is going to switch a little bit. And now we're no longer working with the regulator because the regulator's role was to regulate. Now the company has failed. The regulator is not involved at the same level. And we will work with the professional that's appointed by the court. So in Canada, we have a court system for insolvency, and there could be either a receiver or a liquidator appointed. And we will work with whichever appointed official there is. If there is an insolvency, the clients will be, or the policyholders will be informed by the liquidator exactly how they're protected, and they'll be informed on the insolvency is what happens. That the liquidator will send a letter to each of your clients, and they will say, this is the product you had with this company, and this is how it's protected. So from day one, we try to communicate to the policyholders that they are protected. So based on that, you as financial advisors will have to communicate to your clients. They will ask you questions. So on day one of an insolvency, we will have all the information available on our website. On the last insolvency, the website went live within 10 minutes of the company being declared insolvent. We think it's important, again, to maintain the confidence of the policyholders in the industry. Part of this is that on our website, we will have templates of letters that you can use to send to your own clients to provide those exact details that you want to do, because they will be worried. Even if they're not selling from the product or the company that went insolvent, they'll still be concerned about their overall product. We also, at that time, have a call center, 24/7, both English and French, that will be trained and be fully able to answer questions, not only for policyholders, but for you as financial advisors, because we do believe that most clients will reach out to you to get that information if they have a loss of confidence. So, I think Alicia now will take over, and what we'll do is that she talked to you about the protection. I gave you an overview of Assurus. She's going to go through some case studies so that we can really understand how the protection works and is applied. And if the audience is okay, we can do questions at the end. Okay.
Okay, so switching over back to protection, now that you know all about Assurus. So we're going to do a quick recap of what you've learned so far. So the first thing you're going to do is confirm that your client's policy was issued by a member company in Canada. So this is where I talked about the policy needs to remain in force at the time of failure. Premiums must be continued to be paid. Second thing is to identify the client's benefit and the appropriate Assurus protection. So death benefit, cash value, monthly income, health expense, accumulated value. Then you're going to add together all the similar benefits before Assurus' protection is applied, and this is only if the benefits were issued by the same member company. And finally, identify the category of protection. So your client might receive separate individual and group protection. So let's start with Jack and Susan. So meet Jack and Susan. So Jack and Susan met in university. Shortly after they both graduated, they decided to get married. With the marriage also came the purchase of a condo in the city. Jack is working full-time while Susan is working part-time, and she is obtaining her MBA. So their concern right now is income replacement. Jack and Susan are talking about their finances, and Susan realizes that she will not be able to pay the mortgage on that condo if something happens to Jack, nor will she be able to continue pursuing her MBA. So Jack received your number from a coworker, and he reaches out to you and asks you for some advice. So you run an insurance needs analysis on them and realize the financial situation, and they decide that Jack needs a permanent life insurance now. So Jack bought his term policy from company A. Then Susan bought a policy on her life from company A. Jack is going in again to buy another policy from company A. He realizes now that he has a term policy and a whole life policy. How does Assurus protect him? So because both policies were purchased from the same member company, the death benefits will be added together. So this chart, which I've shown you before, is also on our website, and it is very handy in these situations. So you explain to Jack that His term policy, the death benefit of $150,000, will be added to the death benefit in his whole life policy, which